Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 95 of the CUInsight Experience. This episode is brought to you by Trellance, from data to insights, the right way. My name is Randy Smith. I'm one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com, and it is my job on the show to have conversations with the best and the brightest of the credit union community. I get to pick their brains and see if we can't find a few nuggets that we can all learn from. My guest on today's show is Deedee Myers. Deedee is the founder and CEO of DDJ Myers. She is also a longtime friend and partner of all of ours here at CUInsight.com. I think you'll notice that I missed having these conversations with Deedee while in-person conferences have been on hold. We would normally see each other multiple times a year running around credit unions. I knew this was going to be a fun conversation, and Deedee was going to give us nuggets that we will all learn from. And I'll tell you what, I was right. This episode is packed with hacks that I think you'll be able to use. We talked about leadership lessons learned, the value of coaching, what it takes to be a good leader, and what it doesn't. We spent a lot of time on making sure individually as well as credit unions were asking the right questions. This was such good stuff. We also talked about the next generation of leaders, that group that'll take over for all of us, and asking ourselves that tough question. Is it time to pass the baton? As always, we have some fun and close the show with the rapid fire questions. So without further ado, I give you my conversation with Deedee Myers. Enjoy. Deedee, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, Randy. Thank you. Good to see your smiling face.
Oh, good to see you, my friend. It's been too long. We used to see each other quite often throughout the year, and now we've been homebound. So it's good to catch up, and we'll record it. So, I've started the last few shows with, just because of these interesting times that we're all living in. Have you found any hacks to, keep your team feeling connected? With everything going on, we were talking before we hit record about kids, homeschooling and everything of that nature. There's so much going on inside and outside of work and people's lives right now. Any hacks that you've come across to stay connected?
Yeah, basic ones, Randy, and with a different quality. So connecting with people is really, really important. And to me, it's redefining what connection means. Yes, connecting on the phone, that's one way. What I'm hoping for is a deeper sense of connection. So when I'm talking with someone, my team's talking with me, we're sharing, we're working with clients, is like it's more of a visceral connection versus just a transaction. So going below a couple levels of skin.
Yeah.
So what that means is pausing. Yesterday, we had a check-in with our team and got to see everybody up on Zoom. And at the end, asking, what do they need? They go, more of this, more connections like this. And I go, it seems so simple and it makes sense. So a connection, but deeper level.
It's an interesting thing because I think many of us in the beginning maybe got a little bit of Zoom fatigue, but then once we if we started to move away from it a little bit, I think then we're like, wait a minute, no, we missed actually seeing faces and, connecting with the people. So that makes a ton of sense to me. That's for sure. It
does. And then what I'm also reminded of is storytelling, not just about work or a client, but storytelling that helps build a connection. So we are the stories we tell. So the kinds of stories we tell reveal who we are. So I'm finding teams love that. So I love getting on the phone with a client, talking story. We have one of our team members in Hawaii goes, his name's Timmy, goes, Deedee, let's talk story. So we talk story. So deep sense of connection and telling stories.
That makes a ton of sense to me. When you look back over the past few months, how have you personally grown as a leader?
Well, that's a really deep question. I had to do a little deep work on that one, or on my own recently, is just rolling it back a little bit. And I think most leaders do that. You wake up and go, am I the right leader today? And do I need to get out of the way? And if so, why? And am I willing to? So I'm always telling my team, if you find somebody or one of you thinks you want to step in or somebody else can do better, I'll step away. And so I had that moment. It's like, do I want to do this now? Am I the right leader now after leading through different recessions and a whole bunch of stuff the last 34 years? It's just like, wow, I was not expecting this the last few years of my career.
Absolutely.
So we had some talks about it, but it was like, am I the right leader? And Randy, it's kind of interesting when you get that point in your life and you go, I'm here. everything I've done has prepared me for this moment. All the mistakes that I've made, all the times I've doubted myself, when I stepped out and up onto the burning platform. So that's a moment to do that kind of reflection.
I understand and hear where you're coming from there, because to me in the beginning, once you got past the initial, like, well, this is different, I felt like a lot of things, being further along in a career, it was like, you know what, we're going to make it through this. This is an opportunity, maybe it's to redefine very quickly, but it's like, if what we need to do is keep moving forward and we will come out the better from on the other side of it. So I wonder if that's one of those things that just comes from experience. Like you're saying, everything you've done has prepared you for this moment.
It's noticing what we've learned too as a company is every time we're in a down cycle, it's a time to retool.
Yeah.
To look ahead and go, what are our clients going to need? What support? And we build. So we've been fantastically innovating in our personal lives and at work. So I think it's being in that deep reflection, questioning, are you the right person? If so, why? And what are you going to do to make sure we come out the other end? And you wake up every day with that on the shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that I was thinking about, and you'd messaged when you emailed me, was this idea of like, how is this going to affect future leaders? We have an entire group of, we were talking about your kids before we got on the show. I mean, getting an education in a completely different way. We have young credit union leaders who are now, their careers look completely different, whether it's virtual work or learning even. Some of our friends at CUIs and NAFCU and things of that nature have totally retooled how they're presenting things. Does this change, or is there concern? We're all getting a little older. We got to pass the baton at some point, right?
Yeah, and we need to be sure that people are ready to take the baton and give them a safety net. So the way I look at it is kids in college right now, high school, young career, they're learning and working a different way. Yet it's on us, like when we come out the other side and whatever happens, we're vaccinated or whatever, is that we figure out a way to catch up on the behavioral aspects of leadership and in front of people and a one-on-one. Like we learn to have human connection conversations without a screen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think we need to start thinking, what does that mean to us?
You may have noticed this, like in the beginning of my career, everything was done over the telephone, right? Like, I mean, so you had conversations, and I've noticed some younger people coming into, their professional lives, they're so used to a different form of communication, like the short texts and things of that nature, right? Like that's not the same as, it's almost like a struggle, right? When they're trying to get into more one-on-one, deeper conversations. And I wonder what happens without the screen in front of us from this and things of that nature, if people do have to switch back. So what you're saying resonates. I mean,
that's interesting too, because they don't use the phone.
Right. No, not at all. I'll be honest. I thought it was something that's going to actually push forward to maybe better communication, because now everything is, whether it's FaceTime or video chat, so it's back to having real conversations, not just, short words, in text messaging, which for a decade, it seemed like it was.
Well, defining real conversation is figuring out what's the conversation that matters to the other people. And that's another way of connecting. So I was worried about my twins who just started college, and they were worried too, because they went from like going to Virginia Tech to living at home and going to Arizona State. Nothing wrong with that. I love it. But it's big different. And they decided not to go in the dorms. So they're at home and, school's 5 minutes away. But what I found by watching them is that they are engaging. They're engaging in the Zooms. They're asking questions. They're smiling. So it's stepping through that gate, getting acclimated, feeling like they belong. And then they go. And I'm just transferring that to the work world too.
Absolutely. That makes total sense. Even before this started, we were seeing a lot of disruption in financial services. You and I both been in this space now for quite some time. And historically, credit unions have kind of moved slow, let's just say, to adapting new things. I've been so impressed over the past few months on how quick to face this pandemic credit unions have moved. Has there been a change that you've seen that you think is like here to stay? And the flip side of that question, is there something that credit unions need to be doing a better job of going forward to stay relevant in this fast changing space?
A lot there. I'll just, So I'm going to bring in some human development theory, okay? Because when there's a fire to put out, people get together fast and they go into effective action. So there's a burning platform. They're there. They're taking care of it. What we need to continue to pay attention to is what are the actions and the way that we're coordinating now that when the fire's not there anymore, we can still keep that pace going and not get into complacency or settle or become entrenched again. So it's called awareness theory. There's a fire, let's put it out. But what do we need to? So basically, what I believe we need to do, Randy, is start to capture what are the strengths, what are the actions, what's the kind of thinking that we're doing now, putting out fires that we can accentuate moving forward. Let's not settle back. And that'll help us with our pace, agility, flexibility, futuristic thinking, conceptual thinking, and problem solving.
It's such an interesting thing. You've been, over your career, I'm sure, involved in a ton of strategic planning sessions. And so often pre-pandemic, it was, what are we going to do a year from now or whatever? And I've been on a few CEO calls over the past few months, and that's been one of those triggers, right? That it seems like in some of these leaders' minds where they're like, we used to plan for 6 months, 18 months, a year from now, we've done in 3 to 6 weeks. Like that's it tells us that we can do it. One of the questions I wanted to pose to you on that though was, like when we're in that fire mode, I think all of us run on adrenaline a little bit as well. How do we stop from making sure that we're not burning out and pushing too hard, like maybe once the fire is out? Or is that an issue? Or
Oh, it is always. Don't you think about it every day for yourself? I know I do. It's like, so in our world on our coaching team, we go, where are the open spaces? Move towards the open spaces. If you can't find any open space to go in, relax, resettle, recenter, then you need to shift what you're doing versus what your impact is. Delegate, teach others, whatever. So in coaching, I was talking to somebody this morning, it's like, how are you taking care of yourself? He goes, what do you mean? I go, sleep, nutrition, exercise, quality relationships.
Yeah.
How are you spending your time? So are you around nutritious people doing nutritious things so you can sustain? So we have to watch that burnout factor.
I found even in myself, I had quite a few routines that I had set up over the past few years to, live the life that I wanted to live. And in the beginning of this, work was almost the only known, right? Like you had no idea what was going to happen. So like breaking some of those routines to put my head down and try new stuff, it was kind of exciting. But then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, I need to get back to that stuff that makes me a happy, healthy human, right? Like, so I know, I hear what you're talking about there, and I'm sure I'm not alone on that one. But
absolutely.
The last question in this section, if we were to sit down a year from now, if you break out that foggy crystal ball for me, what are you most proud of that you and your team have accomplished? And maybe blimp level, what are you proud of credit unions for accomplishing?
Yeah, I'm going to go first to the DDJ team.
Yeah.
We constantly look at how can we impact, what's our rich and relevant content. That's one of our pillars. Another is deep relationships. So coming out on the other side, if we can, our goal is to continue to add rich and relevant content, make a difference. And for each person to feel like they've owned some part of that. That's what our responsibility is collectively as a team, how we can do that. And it's great to say there are no weak links at all. So I'm happy about that. And the other thing is, like, as we continue to grow professionally at our company, succession risk is not so tough, right? Which is in credit unions too. So we, shifting there, we're seeing some, not a lot, but some CEOs saying, they've probably done that reflection going, there's fires, there's mudslides, there's pandemic, had an employee die. It's just like, I was going to step away in 2 years. I'm ready to go in 6 months. Let's let somebody else come in. And that takes a lot of courage. Yeah. That's thinking beyond self. So I'm pleased with that. The other piece that I'm hoping for credit unions is for us to, as an industry, understand that we may not know what questions to ask ourselves. Never mind have the answers.
Right. Yeah.
Are we asking the right questions, and what questions are we not even thinking of that someone else can ask? So I'm really excited about that piece. They're called, for us, we call them level 5 questions. We have 5 levels of questions or consciousness. And we're going, it's time to be at level 5. and are thinking and making sense. So that's my hope.
Wow. Yep, you got me thinking. I'd like to move on to the second part of the show, the leadership and life hacks. I was really excited to get through this with you because you've been a coach for quite some time as well. So, and I've always enjoyed the conversations that you and I have had. But just to take a step back, what inspired you originally to start DDJ Myers?
Yeah, that's a good question. It came out of a series of career shifts. Let's see if this makes sense. I started in international marketing, got to work around the world. I used to be semi-fluent in Russian.
Oh, wow.
Lived in Moscow and St. Petersburg for a while. Got to work in Asia, England. And I forget that I did these things.
I was going to say, I've never, in all our conversations, I had no idea that you lived in Russia for a while.
I started a business for an international company in Australia and Sydney. And just like all these little things built on to getting in corporate America. And then Randy figuring out I was such an odd duck. I was causing so much trouble. I was thinking way too far in the future. I didn't know how to coordinate and pace with others. I was too much of a disruption. And always worried I was going to get fired. So,
be your own boss.
Well, then I fell into asset liability management, and I was one of 3 people who started what is now known as Myers. And I sometime figured out that numbers are great, but it's not my game. And I shifted over to the people side. So it was stair-stepping. And but what I learned when I was 16 years old, and I still do this, is I had a defining moment. I'm just going to tell it what it was. So I went to a football game with a friend, and it was cold. So we actually had coats on in Phoenix. And we met some guys, and this guy asked me out. And I go, cool, date. So he asked me out, comes Friday. And I went to open up the door, and I go, oh, he doesn't know I have only one hand.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have my coat on. So I opened up the door, and his eyes went like, oh my gosh, who is this person? This is not who I thought I was asking out. And I go, yeah, he's a little uneasy with me right now. And I had a choice then. I go, my choice is say, hey, I'm not going to go out tonight. Or my choice is to go out and be with someone who's uncomfortable with me and figure out what am I going to learn. So I chose the latter. Yeah. And we went out, and it was so hard for the poor guy. right in the middle of dinner, I go, how about taking me home? And he goes, yeah. So he took me home, and I took out a piece of paper. This is my 16-year-old naive self-coaching. Drew a line down the middle, and this is all very relevant, I promise you. On the left-hand side, I put down, what do I love doing? What do I love doing? On the right-hand side, I put down, what am I really good at that I may not love, but I'm good at? And then look at the intersection points. And that's the place.
That's 16. I'm just like, wow.
Well, that's where I figured out that's where my purpose is, whatever those points were. And so that's how I started DDJ Myers. I looked back at my career, what did I really enjoy? Yeah, it was great to travel the world. And what was I good at? I was good at numbers, budgeting, AL. Well, how can I do the travel, do new things with the numbers piece? And that's how I started DDJ Myers. And it's evolved, of course, over the years, but that's what it was.
Let me ask you this. Over the years, how has the inspiration changed with time on the job?
Yeah, inspiration is, instead of me inspiring myself, how can I be a legend in my own mind to, very vulnerable here is to, what's going to matter 10, 20, 40, 50, 100 years after I'm not here anymore.
Yeah.
So it's a bigger stakes. The people I talk with, coach with, their children, my children, hopefully a lot of grandchildren. And then the money doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter. So long answer. Hopefully that was helpful.
Oh, absolutely. Is there something that your team has heard you say so many times they can finish your sentence?
What is evolving? What is possible?
Oh, I like that. Very cool.
A little of that is some days this is a day where we don't say that word that is spelled N-O-T or C-A-N''T or W-O-N''. We don't have those in our language today. So you have to shift from those negative constraining contracting words to more open possibilities and what's evolving.
I love it. Sometimes, and I guarantee over the past, 6 months, a lot of leaders have had to make those difficult decisions, the ones that like in a short term, people might kind of look at, but that you just know are for the greater good. Is this something you've always been able to do? And how have you cultivated that in yourself? And quite honestly, how do you coach others to be able to make those decisions as well?
Well, I first learned that from one of my mentors, my dad, Cliff. He just says, if you have bad news to give, just give it.
Yep.
And don't do it in an email. Of course, we didn't have email in his day, but pick up the phone or see them if you can, and just say, hey, I've got news. You're not going to like it. Let's go. Let's talk about it and figure it out. And here's the situation. And here's my decision.
Yeah.
But just step into it. And oftentimes I can visibly see the other person start to relax, or like, okay, now we're in a different conversation. The old conversation wasn't working. Now we're in a different conversation, and we can make something here, whether we separate or we come together in a new way.
That's a good point. Is there a common myth about being a good leader that you want to debunk? For many.
You can't lead by yourself. You can direct action. You can decide what to do. Yet to be a true leader is evolving others, helping others step up, and bringing them into the conversation. But also, Randy, and also I should say, is knowing when to go. You can listen. Input might be valuable, maybe not. And then it's up to you to say, okay, heard everybody. This is what I'm hearing, and this is where we're going. Will you follow me?
Absolutely. The amount of times that this has come up on the podcast in conversations with, CEOs from around our space, that idea of leading is, bringing others. And like a tough thing for a lot of younger leaders to maybe wrap their head around, because, earlier in our career, a lot of the times that like go get 'em attitude where you put your head down and you do great work and you work hard. That's what is almost rewarded and gets you to that point of leadership. And then all of a sudden you're like, you have to make that switch. It can be a difficult thing for people.
It is, especially if you were a leader that was brought up into being operationally oriented, but not able to be the strategic visionary thinker. And then what we're also seeing is people who score really higher, have a lot of competency and futuristic thinking, score low in goal orientation.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's both.
it's a combination, right? When you think back to earlier in your career, was there a mistake that you made, that mistake that quite honestly you see a lot of young leaders make?
Oh, I don't know if a lot of young leaders made this, but I was brought up to be very independent. Military father, West Point, Air Force, banker. Be independent. That was a value in the house. And what I learned, I was a little older than 16, maybe 30. I learned that there's a cost to being too independent.
Yeah.
If you're too independent, then you don't let others in. And earlier we were talking about connecting. So there's a cost. So yeah, for me was doing everything on my own versus learning to coordinate, collaborate, and communicate with others, that I think is this generation coming up has a lot of potential in.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. Yeah, I think very collaborative. So it's a beautiful thing. Has there been a piece of advice or a life lesson that you've found yourself going back to over and over throughout your career?
Piece of advice, yeah. If I was to give myself advice early in my career, is ask more questions about desired expectations at the end. Otherwise, I was told this is what needs to happen, and I would just go do it and not get in conversation with others. I remember going to Sydney, and my job was to find a location for an office and build it out and hire a team. But I never heard what my managers or leaders' expectations were, so I just did it. Good thing it turned out okay, but I could have made a lot of mistakes. I asked questions involving others, that whole thing about connecting and being curious.
Yeah, expectations are a dangerous thing if you sometimes. So, one thing I noticed in the first season of the podcast was how many people had like mentoring relationships were very important in their career, or that network around them. Is this something you've benefited from? And, from a coaching perspective, is that something that you encourage others to find and do, and why?
Yeah, we have a saying, it's professionals have coaches, amateurs do not. So I have a peer coach. Her name's Jennifer. She's on our team. Awesome person. And then my life teacher, Richard Strozzi Heckler, who's written some great books on leadership and coaching, is the kind of person I can call and say, hey, here's what's up, Richard. And he can say something for a minute that changes my life.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a very cool thing to have. Before we move on to the last part of the show, if you have a free day, which I know are few and far between, nothing on the calendar, what does Deedee do to recharge? What does work-life integration look like to you?
I'm teaching my kids one at a time how to take our 1997 Defender Land Rover, the D90, on technical trails.
Really? Okay.
This is a life part of me a lot of people don't know, but I used to had a side job at Land Rover where I would take their new owners and teach them how, and was on the cover and an infomercial for Land Rover once. But I have a 1997 yellow soft top Defender 90, and we go out on trails and I teach them how to rock crawl. And the neat thing about it, Randy, is you see this obstacle in front of you, very relevant to today. And I say, you can do this. You can get to the top. And teaching them how to center, how to put it in the right gear, how to crawl 2 or 3 miles per hour, when to push it to 10 and get up over the obstacle. So we leave the house at 6 and we're on the trail like 7:30, and I rip the top off. I don't care if it's 115 degrees, and we go.
So wait, you do this individually with like all 4 of the 17-year-olds, or
one at a time?
Yeah. Oh.
And now they're trying to convince me to buy a new Defender so we can go out together. So I say, what do you want to save? How do you want to save money there?
Yeah, right. What would you like to give up? Well, that's really cool. No, I never knew that about you at all. That's a fun story. On to the last part of the show, the rapid fire questions. The questions are rapid. Your answers don't have to be. You mentioned that date in high school and going to the football game. What were you like in high school? And do you remember the first time you got in any memorable trouble?
I don't know what I had. Not in high school. In college, I did.
Okay.
I was a big partier.
In college?
Oh, well, actually, I did get kicked out when I was almost 17.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so I've been on my own my senior year of high school and all the way since then. So I did piss off somebody then.
You did something to the military father, right?
I did do something. But that was part of my journey going, okay, who am I? Who am I becoming? And what works for me and what works for others. So it started pretty early.
I was just going to say, it sounds like, I mean, even from your checklist after that date, but it sounds like you've always been a deep thinker about yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So do you ask yourself? It sounds like a lot of questions also.
All the time. All the time. Yeah.
I wish I would have known that earlier in life. It took me to about 35 to start asking myself questions, I think. So, but it's been a beautiful change since then. So most of us stumbled into a career in credit unions. What did you want to be growing up? What was the dream job? I
wanted to be a journalist.
Okay. Right.
I was on the high school and college paper. I've been a writer. I do academic writing.
I was going to say, you still write today, so that's...
Yeah, I do. Just had a piece in the Transformative Journal, but I write a lot. Most of my days are writing.
Oh, okay.
Write a lot for organizations, for people. Yeah.
You'll have to send us over the links to some of the pieces that you want us to feature in the show notes, because we've got place for them. So,
okay, forgot about that. I'll do that. Yeah,
absolutely. Do you have any daily routines that if you just don't do, your day feels off?
Yeah, going back to, I love setting up a container for the homeschoolers to feel safe and organized in the house. Like last week, I took my first trip. I come home. How was it, kids, being alone? I mean, 17, 18, they can stay alone for a day or two.
Yeah.
And one of my daughters, she goes, Mom, I felt so disorganized.
Oh, without Mom?
You weren't here, you know. So I like to be that center for them.
It sounds like you're laying out the tools for them to be able to do what they need to do and feel safe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So is that something you prep every night, do in the morning?
Yeah, both. Depends on when they get the dishes done. Like last night, I couldn't get done what I wanted to, so I was up at 4:30 this morning baking cakes because they all want their own. So for the birthday, part of my day.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of my day. I don't know when you sleep. The random question: what's the best album of all time? That one you can listen to and not skip a song.
I have like a couple, but Rolling Stones, you can't always get what you want. I think we all get.
No truer words have ever been said.
This one is, the lyrics I love, and the world's a stage. Push rewind just in time.
Just in time.
And then going back to high school, my first concert was Chicago.
Okay.
Way back then, and you're the inspiration. So all those have some meaning to me.
They're with you. You're not turning it if they pop on the radio, that's for sure, right? So I'm a reader. Jill and I have stacks of books all over. I see the books behind you. Is there a book that you've either gifted others over your career or one that you just think everyone should read?
Yeah, it's Dog-Eared, and Richard Leiter with the Adventure Group out of Minneapolis. I did a 3-week vision quest with him in Tanzania.
Oh, wow.
Been on the ground and really asking myself a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But one of his favorite books he has is The Power of Purpose. It's like, how do you get out of bed, put your feet on the ground, and know you're going to make a difference and enjoy it?
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's goodie and oldie.
We will link to that for sure.
Oh, less important. Yeah, my paycheck.
Yeah.
But then that's important because I have 6 kids to put through college.
Right. Not done yet.
And so we have this thing called organizing principle. Each of us, implicitly under the surface in our core being, we organize around something. So whether it's obvious to you or others, everything I do is organized around my children.
Okay.
I need to love my job. I need to love the people I hang out with. I need to have that nourishing time for my children.
Yeah.
I want them to see that, I love my work, and so they too can love their work.
Yeah, you're setting quite the example, that's for sure. There's a question I didn't send you. When you hear the word success, who is the first person that comes to mind?
I'm going to say myself.
Tell me more. I'm just going to let you know, I absolutely love that answer. It's only one other person has answered that, Sam Paxson, who we both know from Co-op. And when she said it, I absolutely loved it too. That was 80 some episodes ago. So I asked her the same thing. Tell me why. I love that answer.
She said it the same way, or
she said myself, and then I think she almost tried to walk it back a little, like, "Ooh, that sounds egotistical," and I was like, "No, I love that. Go, tell me why." And so I say the same thing to you. Tell me why.
Well, I said earlier, we are our stories. The stories we tell. I'm the culmination of many other people's stories and the impact that they had on me, and what big impact. I mean, even from the college counselor says, "Why are you here? You'll never amount to anything. Don't go to college." And I have a PhD.
Right.
He was my inspiration. Okay. To my dad saying, "Deedee, you can be who you want and what you want. Decide who you want first." A lot of people. So I'm the culmination. I'm successful because of the success of others.
I love it. That is fantastic. A perfect way to wrap up. I thank you again, Deedee, for being on the show and sharing your story with our listeners. My last question for you, do you have any final asks of the listeners or final thoughts you'd like to share?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I would just ask that we just keep asking ourselves, reflecting like what's possible. What's possible and why not?
Why not? Oh, I love it. I think I know the name for this episode. We'll link to everything in the show notes that we talked about today. If people have additional questions of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you? LinkedIn, Twitter, email? What's your poison?
Yeah, email's great. Deedee Myers at DDJ Myers. LinkedIn, Deedee Myers. Twitter, Deedee Myers.
You're there? Well, we will link to all of that in the show notes as well. Thank you again, my friend, so much for being on the show. It was so good to actually see you through Zoom, and please stay healthy, my friend. Have a great day.
Thanks, Randy.
Before we go, I just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of you for listening. We wouldn't get to have this much fun doing what we do without you. And once again, a big thank you to Deedee for taking the time out of her busy schedule to share her experiences with all of us. And a huge thank you to our sponsor, Trellance. Our friends at Trellance have been a longtime partner and supporter of ours. So please make sure to click on their link in the show notes and give them some love. See how they are transforming data into actionable insights for credit unions from coast to coast. And then don't forget about the CUInsight Experience podcast book list. If you need some stimulation for the old mind, we've got you covered. Get your next book recommendation from the guests on our show. Thank you all again for listening. Have a great day, and please stay well, friends.